Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show, Your Decision 2018. This is part 2 of our special series with District Attorney George Brauchler, who is running for Attorney General and has the Republican nomination to do so. George, great having you on the show again.
It's great to be back.
Hey, well,
feels like moments.
Yeah, it was just minutes ago, actually hours ago.
That's right.
You know, one of the things I want to talk to you about, because you get to talk to people about the legal system, you're in the middle of the legal system. There seems to be a lot of controversy about the efficacy of the legal system, the fairness of the legal system, and the fact that we have so many laws. And let's start off with that. We have so many laws that 99% of the population, if not 100%, just is overwhelmed by the number of laws we have. And no one knows even a tiny percentage of the laws in this country. Is that a challenge? How do we address that?
I think it's a challenge, but more at the federal level. I mean, you have seen over the last 10 or 20 years a proliferation of federal rules to cover every aspect of conduct, less so at the state level. Everything that we have is written down and codified in a couple places. One is the Colorado Revised Statutes, Title 18, that governs almost everything. Title 42 governs motor vehicle and stuff. But I think there's something that we could do about that. And I've just started to talk about this, but the idea of sunsetting our substantive criminal laws. Nobody does this, as far as I know, on the planet, let alone in the United States. But if we were to pass some type of a constitutional amendment that says, here's the deal, every new substantive law that we create that creates a new crime, within 2 years, 3 years, whatever, the time doesn't matter, it sunsets. And so we all have to get back together under the gold dome and evaluate, did this do what it was supposed to do? Was it abused? Should it be tweaked? Should we just get rid of it? And then if it survives that first 2 or 3 year review, then it stays on for 10 years. And we come back and we reevaluate it again. And it can't just be for a review, it has to be for an actual sunsetting. And the point of that would be to address what you're talking about. And that is to put every generation in a position to have its fingerprints on the laws that will govern it. And maybe they'll sit down and say, my gosh, I didn't know we had a law for X, Y, or Z. We only need one for X or Y, so we're going to let Z die off. It is an approach that I think encourages a smaller government, a more limited government, and a more responsive government to each generation. I'd like to see us go that direction to address exactly what you brought up.
All right, in that vein, if you, and this may be one of your wishes, if you could make one change in the American legal system, what would it be?
Boy, that's tough because it is inefficient, but that inefficiency is predicated on a desire to protect individuals' rights from the man, from the government. And I don't know that I would want to trade any aspect of that away. I'll give you an example. After the Aurora Theater case, and you know, we convicted this guy pretty quickly. We got through the first 2 of 3 phases of sentencing pretty quickly. And then on the 3rd phase, at least the story that was told by all the jurors we spoke with was a juror stood up on day 2 and said, yeah, I'm never going to vote for death on this case, and it ended. And in the aftermath of that, a lot of people came forward and said, well, we should change the law so you don't have to have a unanimous verdict for death, especially on a case that's so clear-cut. I disagree. I want to see unanimity for death. It should be very difficult and rare to achieve that kind of a thing. And so I feel that way when you ask the question, what's the single biggest change you would make? It'd probably be transparency. And I want the public to have greater access to information about the criminal justice system. And here's where I think that could show up. Why don't we have permanent cameras in the courtrooms at all times? For the Aurora Theater case, there was a motion filed by the media to say, hey, let's put cameras in the courtroom. We want to videotape the entire trial. And there was pushback from the victims. There was pushback from the defendant. And in this case, the Judge Samore, who just got appointed to the Colorado Supreme Court, he's going to be great for Colorado, he said, no, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a high-definition camera up in the corner of the courtroom. Only I can control it. It'll never show a juror. It's never going to show children. We're not going to put autopsy photos up. And we're going to put this case on TV. Now, the victims were outraged initially that that happened. But in the aftermath of the trial, to a person, they came back around and said, you know what? That turned out to be great. I didn't have to be in the courtroom with the guy that killed my daughter or my son or my husband or my wife. I was able to sit there and keep tabs on the trial. And it got me thinking, this is what's missing from our system, is that you can't sit down at your laptop over lunch and say, what the heck is Brauchler doing in Arapahoe County? What are his DAs doing? What are the judges doing? Right now, you vote Thumbs up or thumbs down for judges you've never met, you can't pronounce their names, you don't know what they do in court. Shouldn't we make it just as easy to go online and hold the criminal justice system accountable? Every player, prosecution, defense, judges, even the sheriffs that work in the courtroom. Shouldn't we see what's going on firsthand if we're going to end up having control over it? And instead, it is shrouded in more, I think, unintended secrecy than any other part of government, and yet it's the one that impacts us all the time.
So those are decisions that judges make. So is it really unintended?
I think it's unintended from this standpoint. I think judges believe, look, the courtroom is open to the public. Anybody can come here and watch what we do. That's true, but the reality is this: you're working right now. I'm working right now. To get in the car and drive to Arapahoe County to sit in and watch a trial, even a trial of some, noteworthy stature, very difficult, very hard to pull off. I think that we need to take the lead as Coloradans and force transparency in the criminal justice system. And I think people will be surprised. I think they'll look and they'll say, man, those DAs, incredibly good looking. No, I think they'll say, very well prepared, and they do a nice job. But there's going to be times where they're going to say, I think that person was completely unprepared. Or they'll listen to the facts of a case and say, my God, is this what we're forcing to go to trial, this ridiculous crime? Other times they'll listen to the defense and say, what a giant waste of taxpayer money. Of course the guy was at the scene. He was wearing an ankle monitor that put him at the scene. How do you have an alibi defense for that? But that single piece will engender the conversations that help us get to a better criminal justice system long term.
Well, it also, I think, give the public a chance to see judges in action.
Oh my gosh, absolutely right. As you know, they have these criminal justice review commissions that are set up, and they mean well. And I think they earnestly try to do a good job. But the blue books they generate and the stuff they put online, I don't go and look at them. I mean, people in November will email me, text me, and call me and go, well, hey, dude, who's this person? What do we do with that? What do we do with this? It would be so much better if you could watch them live on court do their thing. It's one of the things I think that makes Judge Samore unique is that people can go back, and the entire Aurora Theater trial is on YouTube, and you can watch how he conducted that trial. That's a real judge. We got a trial done probably a month and a half sooner than we had planned to do it because of his efficiency, because of his willingness to set a high bar, and you were either going to make it or you will feel it. And he was even-handed, and I thought he did a great job.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with George Brauchler in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is part 2 of our special 2-part series with George Brauchler, who is running for Attorney General in the state of Colorado on the Republican ticket. So one of the fascinating aspects of your work is certainly you get to see people incarcerated, you get to incarcerate people as DA, But how does it strike you, and what's your take on the fact that the United States has almost, what, 2.25 million people incarcerated or in the system, more than any other country in the world, costing us billions of dollars? I mean, some of the estimates of the direct costs are as high as $100 billion a year for prisons, jails, et cetera, and the system where these people are in. Some of the sociological studies done say that the cost to society is as high as $1.2 trillion a year. Why do we have so many people incarcerated, besides the easy answer, they committed crimes? But what can we do to lower that number without jeopardizing public safety and save states and the federal government millions of dollars?
Yeah, there's no doubt that incarceration is the costliest outcome of the criminal justice system, but I'm here to tell you it's needed. I mean, there are people out there that cannot control themselves, that are violent, and they're repeat offenders. There's no place to put them, in my opinion, to keep your family and mine safe other than prison. Now, why are we different than other countries? A lot of that is cultural. We place a premium on liberty, and that also means that when people violate that liberty, we take it pretty seriously. Now, I think there has been some great discussions about criminal justice reform in the last 5 to 10 years about things we should do, but most of the over-incarceration piece grows out of the federal government. Once again, it's not the state of Colorado. In the federal government, you still have people serving lengthy prison sentences for the possession of distributable amount of drugs, but just that. We just don't do that the same way in Colorado, when we haven't as long as I've been doing this. I've only been doing this 24 years. But I mean, you know, when people talk about people going to jail or prison for marijuana, that was never an issue here. I mean, look, short of you being in your sentencing, in court, smoking a joint and blowing your smoke in the judge's face, I think it's incredibly unlikely anyone even before 64 would have been incarcerated for what they do. I think the other approach that we need to take, though, is to try to, again, figure out where does rehabilitation fit into this, because we're good at locking people up, but we're not good at what we do with them once they're locked up. And if we had more resources going to that, I think we'd have lower recidivism. But the big picture item, the thing that would make being district attorney boring, is if we could figure out what we do between ages 0 and 6, maybe 0 and 12. If we invested resources at the front end of what we do with those kids, then I think the criminal justice system is dramatically changed in one generation from just doing that, because you will start to see people not making the same decisions they make now because they have other tools at their disposal.
So what kind of resources would be required to do that, to accomplish that goal?
Well, and it's not just money. Some of the resources has to be, we have to re-emphasize the importance of family. Family matters here. We have spent a couple generations here saying it doesn't matter if there's mom and dad in the home and you shouldn't judge. Well, it shouldn't be about judgment. It should be about what is best for a kid. And even though I know great people, good friends of mine who are raised by single parents, that is not the rule. I mean, if you look at some of the birth rates for single parents, they're skyrocketing. And by and large, those are people that end up at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. And you combine those two things and you put kids in school districts that don't perform as well. They have less opportunities, less discipline, and lo and behold, they tend to get into trouble more. And a generation removed, they become adult offenders. We've got to figure out a way to make education better, regardless of where you live in the metro area and around the state of Colorado. We've got to figure out a way to keep families together. We've got to figure out a way to provide a way that both parents don't have to work all the time to still provide a decent living.
All right, how about restorative justice? What role do you think that can play in the state?
Depends on what you mean by restorative justice. I mean, there are some cases that don't cry out for it. I like the idea, and we have adopted as part of our juvenile diversion program, the idea that juvenile offenders will have to sit down with the victims that they've created and see face-to-face the reality of their conduct. But I don't think that that's applicable across the board, and I think it's something that you can't force the system to have. You can only encourage it and provide the tools for it.
All right, violent crime, I mean, we've been touching on violent crime, sometimes indirectly, sometimes directly. Why do you think when you look at our country, we have so much violent crime in America? And you had referenced the cultural issue or factor. Talk a little bit about that, and how do we change something like that, which seems so systemic today?
You know, I wish I could come up with a silver bullet to fix that or an answer. I can't say that you can lay it all at the feet of, let's say, video games, or lay it all at the feet of violent sports, or lay it all at the feet of dads absent from homes. But each of those plays its role, you know, in getting to a place where we're desensitized to the physical harm that people commit against each other. We're not the same country we were 40 or 50 years ago, and some of that's good, but some of it's bad. I think it's easier for people to see themselves and justify themselves engaging in a physical reaction to a slight that they have, whether it's through road rage or something else. These are things that we got to take care of.
Okay, let's talk, I'd like to explore that just a little bit more. I know we've got to go to a break, but the concept, I mean, you talk about a slight resulting, being blown up into potentially a homicide, whether it be road rage or anything else. It seems this whole concept of respect and disrespect, has that grown to be a much greater phenomenon than it was, say, just 20 or 30 years ago?
Maybe. I mean, even 20 or 30 years ago, I mean, I remember, I was 2 at the time. No, I'm kidding. I remember watching
you were 4.
Boys in the Hood. And that same concept permeated that. I mean, you look at old gangster movies and the Capone stuff, and there was that same sense of respect, disrespect. I don't know if it's any different now, but we haven't seemed to figure out how to move past it and to get to a place where the little slights here and there are not condemnations of you as a person or your character. I also say this, though, too, man. Social media has changed the discourse in this country, and I don't think it's for the better. I mean, I like the ability to go and learn information without having to wait for it to come on the TV set at 5, 6, and 10. But there are aspects of social media that are just brutal, and they encourage a very base approach to communication, all emotion, and I think that encourages people to act emotionally.
All right, we're going to take our last break, and we'll be right back with George Brauchler.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more, to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe, as I do, in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
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 I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is our last segment in our two-part series with George Brauchler. Let's talk about gun violence. I mean, when you look at the statistics in this country, the number of people, 35,000 roughly, die at the hands of gun violence every year. Two-thirds of those are approximately two-thirds are from suicides. Our numbers, no other country, no other certainly industrialized country on the planet comes close to the numbers. You look at Japan or Canada, or I mean, some of these other countries you're talking about, they have 100 gun deaths a year or something like that. What's the difference here? What's the challenge? And what is George Brauchler's solution to reducing gun violence in America?
Well, look, we're different than all those other countries, and I don't think we aim to try to be more like those other countries. It's part of how we got created, right? We left Europe because we didn't like it. And so we have a Second Amendment that has been part of our Constitution from the word go, and it is as protected and coveted as the First Amendment by most Americans. The gun violence thing is real. I think the numbers speak for themselves. I do think that the suicide part is different, and that is, I'm not convinced that, hey, if we didn't have guns, then people that were inclined to kill or hurt themselves would go, well, I guess I'll just go to the park. I don't see it like that. But I do think the growing issue is mental health. And I think that the status quo that we have right now is ineffective. And if anybody out there is thinking to themselves, nope, I'm good with all the laws we have on the books and I think everything's working fine, then you and I don't agree. The last day of last year, I was awakened by the sheriff, Tony Spurlock, to come out to a parking lot behind a bowling alley at the corner of University and County line as he and the sheriff from Arapahoe County and some SWAT teams tried to figure out how to rescue Zach Parrish, who we didn't know at the time had been murdered, shot multiple times. That case, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back for the sheriffs of Arapahoe, Douglas, me, for legislator Cole Wist, in the idea that we don't have the tools available to us to try to deal with this intersection between mental illness and firearms possession. And there's something needed to be done. Now, look, all the legislators I'm aware of during that period of time all said, yeah, but let's do something. Let's keep guns out of the hands of crazies. And then that legislative session went January, February, March, April, and ain't nothing happened with any of those issues. And so there was this extreme arrest protection order that was discussed. I had a hand in trying to make sure that it complied as much with due process and the Second Amendment as possible, while at the same time saying we need to do something. And frankly, it didn't do well in the legislature. There was a lot of hard feelings from some folks. And here we are today with the exact same inadequate status quo that we had back on December 31st, 2017, with our fingers crossed, hoping we don't get another Zach Parrish.
So, but even if that law had passed and law enforcement had to go to a residence to tell a person that they needed to take away his or her weapons, same situation could occur.
Could, unlikely it would. And in fact, you know,
and tell me why. Why couldn't that played out identically?
Well, one, remember, they had already been to his house once a couple weeks before, once earlier that night.
Same day.
He actually summons them back at 3 a.m. by calling 911 himself. I mean, in my opinion, he's laying in wait for them to plan this. This was different. His parents had said, look, he actually says to his roommate, he says, my parents want me to get mental health treatment and they want to take my guns from me. Talking to the parents say, had this law existed, we would have availed ourselves of it. In the absence of this, you get what you get here. Now, is this going to be a cure-all for everything? Absolutely not. But if you look at a state like Indiana, super conservative Indiana, they've had this law in their books since 2006. It's been used 46 times. That's less than once a season. It seems to me it's not going to be the everyday thing where I'm showing up to your house and said, hey, your ex-girlfriend from 30 years ago says you're coming off the tracks. I want to come in and take your... It's not going to be like that.
How did you know about that?
Well, I think the internet told me.
Among other things.
There were some pictures.
Opioids. How big a problem is it in Colorado compared to a state like Ohio? And what do we need to do?
I'm going to presume Ohio's the Mecca. I can't really compare it because I don't care about Ohio's numbers. I care about Colorado's. And in our limited jurisdiction, the opioid addiction is a big deal. There are anecdotal stories and numbers to back it up from the coroner. Anecdotally, there are Englewood police officers who have told me stories of hitting the same guy 3 times in 3 months with Narcan to revive him. And when they got to them the 4th time, it was too late. He'd OD'd. If you talk to Dr. Lear, the coroner and medical examiner in Arapahoe, she will tell you there is a spike in deaths related to that. The problem is the criminal justice system can't solve this. We can't arrest our way out of this, can't incarcerate our way out of this, and frankly, we can't rehab our way out of this. It is going to take a multifaceted approach that I think, frankly, from the Attorney General's office, there are many more tools to be used to advance this cause. And it's not going to be fixed in a month, a year, or a decade. This is a long-term problem with a long-term solution.
Does it make sense for the AG's office to take a look and go after, for example, doctors or clinics that overprescribe opioids, number one? And how about the responsibility of pharmaceutical companies in all this?
I think those are real areas that an attorney general should look at, not just from a consumer protection standpoint, but just from the regulation of the medical practice or even some of these out-of-state businesses. I mean, if you look at the AGs across the country that have started the process of filing these suits against Big Pharma, they're not just Democrats. I mean, Pam Bondi from Florida, which is a state that I think is still part of the union, that she has filed a lawsuit on it. This is something an attorney general should take a look at. But make no mistake, you can't sue your way out of this problem. We're not going to get some big multi-million-dollar settlement and bam, this problem goes away. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, or multi-billion-dollar settlement.
Or multi-billion-dollar,
yeah,
like
you
tobacco.
need more than
right.
that. You know, the state of Colorado seems to have had a historical problem in the arena of child abuse, where we seem to do a very poor job of tracking abuse, often failing to even identify it in terms of through the appropriate agency. Our databases seem to be obsolete and certainly not current. What can the AG's office do about child abuse?
Well, because, you know, within the AG's office, they represent every aspect of state government, including, we have this, I'm going to say new, it's not that new. They have the Office of Child Protection Ombudsman that they provide legal counsel for. They also represent the Division of Human Services. Through that capacity, I think the AG has the ability to impact some of the decisions that they make and how they exercise the discretion that they have. The metrics piece is bigger than the AG's office, and you're right. And by the way, it's not just limited to the child stuff. The criminal justice system in Colorado suffers from crappy metrics. We don't have a good way. I couldn't tell you today, what did Colorado look like regarding marijuana in 2012 versus 2015, you know, 3 years after it was legal? I can't tell you that because we never collected that information accurately. It spills over into the child abuse and child neglect arenas, and we got to change that because we can't have a meaningful policy discussion about what changes to make until we know exactly what's wrong. We're living on anecdotes, and that's not enough.
All right, last question. We've touched on marijuana, talked about it previously, but
we didn't actually touch marijuana.
No, certainly I haven't today,
never,
anyway.
Never.
So in regard to what the state can do with marijuana and the challenges presented by marijuana, the fact that it's legal in the state, according to state law, not federal law, what kind of leadership would you provide as Attorney General addressing some of the issues in terms of the ability to participate in banking, for example? Right now it's a cash business, which I would think you would feel creates a lot of opportunity for criminal activity as well. Talk just quickly, you've got 60 seconds about what your leadership would be in this arena.
I was opposed to Amendment 64. 55% of Colorado's voters disagreed with me and put it in our Constitution. It is the law of our land. We have been permitted to operate in the same space that the federal government has in marijuana. And I would resist, I would oppose efforts by the federal government to now at this late date come in and try to put federal law on top of us. But this being now a legal product in the state of Colorado, I think we're obligated to treat it like a legal product, and that includes trying to encourage access to banking, because you're right, cash leads to crime. To facilitate other things regarding investment, how it's regulated as a commercial enterprise, taking it out of homes. I believe that too. The great weakness that we have right now is you can have home grows. That's very difficult for law enforcement to wrap its hands around. I think that I would be the Attorney General that says, I want to enforce the spirit of the will of the state of Colorado, but I also want to fight like heck to protect our communities and our families from the ills that spill out of legalized recreational marijuana. And make no mistake, there are ills. And
how about in terms of the use by kids? What statistics have you seen since legalization and the impact on young people? Say anybody under 21.
Yeah, it's funny. Again, we don't do a good job of keeping metrics. So what we end up relying upon are there are these student surveys where we ask students to anonymously identify themselves as smokers and how often, all that. Completely inaccurate. If you talk to school superintendents, they will tell you the number of disciplinary cases that arise out of the possession or use of marijuana is certainly increased. That's inconsistent with what we get from the surveys. If you talk to pediatricians, if you talk to ER doctors, you know that they're seeing a spike in the number of cases involving, maybe overdose is too strong of a word, but almost like a marijuana toxicity, the impact of marijuana. We don't have a good way to say X% applies to this age bracket, and that's a weakness in our system, but I don't have any doubts that kids are being adversely affected by the prevalence of marijuana.
All right. George, thanks very much.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. This was great. I appreciate this.
That was George Brauchler, the Republican nominee for Attorney General. Make sure you watch part 1 of this 2-part series as well. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.